Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 194. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this channel where all we do is talk and discuss new movies, and we decide after watching it once, is it timeless? We are back with another episode. We just put an episode up this past weekend, but a lot of movies are coming out in the month of May. We're going to be playing a little bit of catch up, but no worries. On the Timeless Movie Podcast, you will see movie discussions for every single release in this summer blockbuster year of 2026. Now, speaking of prior episodes, episode 193 of the Timeless Movie Podcast is out on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Go listen to it. Leave your comments. I ended up going solo and talking all about this new horror movie called Obsession. It is directed by Curry Barker, and I thought he did a phenomenal job with this movie. The performances are awesome. The scary elements are really cool and unique. But is it timeless? Well, you're going to have to go listen to that episode in order to find out my answer. And while you're listening to that past episode or any other episode that has come out on the channel, please do me a favor. It would help us out a lot if you would follow, subscribe, like, comment, share, do all of that good stuff in order to really grow this channel of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Want to build a community, want to talk to you guys all about movies that are coming up this year and beyond as well. Also, last housekeeping item, you can always reach out to me as well. timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. Always happy to hear your guys' thoughts, questions. What do you want to see or listen to on this podcast? I would love to hear your guys' feedback. So please reach out to me, timelessmoviepod, all one word, @gmail.com. All right, let's go ahead now and jump into this week's new movie, in which we are talking about the new action thriller movie called In the Gray. This one is directed by Guy Ritchie. This is going to be one of the movies that, like the movies that we saw in January, February, and a little bit of March, no trailers. I didn't see anything about this specific film. All I knew was that it was a Guy Ritchie movie. I saw that Henry Cavill, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Isaac Gonzalez were there. And that's all I needed. I wanted to really just check it out because I've been really craving an action movie, and this came at the perfect time. So now that we got to check it out on opening night, let's now segue into the non-spoiler section. That way I can give you a little bit about the synopsis, a little bit of details of the film, and my overall thoughts. All right, In the Gray, I just mentioned, was directed by Guy Ritchie. If you are not aware with his work, he has made countless number of films like Snatch, Sherlock Holmes, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Gentleman, and The Covenant, just to name a few. In this film, we have three big stars that at least I'm hoping you guys have heard of, which are Henry Cavill, Jake Gyllenhaal, Isaac Gonzalez. We also have a couple of other folks that also were part of this movie, like Carlos Bardem, Rosamund Pike, and Christopher Hivju. So, what happens in the movie In the Gray? Well, in this film, we are introduced to a character named Rachel, played by Isaac Gonzalez. She is a lawyer, and her job is to basically help companies regain money or assets that they may have lost or misplaced in some kind of way. Now, in this specific situation, Rachel is tasked in order to recover $1 billion from a man named Salazar. Salazar is played by Carlos Bardem. However, Salazar refuses to play nicely with Rachel, which then leads Rachel, in order to regain this asset of money, well, she's going to have to also not play as nice, and she enlists the help of two of her good friends, Sid and Bronco. Sid, played by Henry Cavill, Bronco, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And together, they are going to devise a plan in order to try to get this money back by any means necessary. All right, after watching In the Gray, what were my thoughts? I thought this movie was pretty good. Nothing spectacular. What I will say, in the area that really kind of just sticks out to me after I left the theater, this has really some of the best action sequences or set pieces in 2026 so far. We haven't gotten too many action movies. I'm trying to really think back and on the fly. Like They Will Kill You was one of the action movies that we've seen this year, which had some good action. I'm really struggling to think of anything else. So I guess so far, In the Gray, I think, really has some awesome moments where they just show all of this adrenaline. And speaking of adrenaline, I think Guy Ritchie just nails that kind of a feeling in his movies. Whenever it has to deal with car chases, whether it deals with explosions, whatever it might be to capture the attention of the audience, I think he's just always able to find this path to just make it intriguing, make it fresh. And there's a lot of moments in The Gray that really capture the action-packed adrenaline that you would want to see in this kind of a movie. However, I have noticed a couple of things, at least from his last couple of films for Guy Ritchie, that are starting to just kind of just become outliers, I guess, in that the story aspect or the narrative of the movies they're not as strong. They don't, rise to the occasion as compared to the action does, if that makes any sense. In his past films, like I think it's the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. There was another film also before that where the stories, I don't know, they just don't really have a strong type of a pitch, or they don't keep me interested. And so that's unfortunate because I would want them to be balanced. I would want action and the story to be hand in hand, working together to just make it an awesome experience. But again, the story kind of let the film down in a way, at least in my opinion, for In the Gray. Now, regarding my opinion, I would like to share some pros and cons because I feel like that'll maybe help expand a little bit more about this conversation about this movie. And it lets you a little bit of an insight into my brain as to what I liked and didn't like about this experience. All right, first pro for In the Gray. I really liked the methodical process that the team had in order to really break down what their plan was and how they were going to pressure Salazar into giving them back that money that he owed. Now, the team is consisting of Rachel, as well as Sid and Bronco, and a couple of other team members that help them along the way. But when I say the methodical process of their plan, they actually include two really cool aspects that I really haven't seen from like an action thriller, like a heist type of a movie. They include the words of like practicality and procedural. So they try to be very practical in regards to, hey, like let's use the technology or things that we have available to spy on our opponent. Or the procedural would could be related to legal procedures, like what kind of laws can we do and use to our advantage in order to stop Salazar from maybe traveling from country to country or using some of his assets. So that kind of combination of using the law but also using a lot of the techniques that you would expect to see in an action or a spy movie, they kind of blended those two together in order to really come up with a cool way to again pressure somebody to do something that they don't want to do. So that's I think that's what was very clever about this movie is that it didn't really try to show, hey, this is going to be a typical heist movie. They're going to be stealing something valuable. Instead, they're trying to force somebody to give them money that they owe. Salazar, the antagonist of this film, owes $1 billion. How are we going to force his hand in order to give us that money? Well, let's use all of the capabilities that we have at our disposal, whether that means international law, whether that means spying, whether that means bribing, whatever it is, but we have to find a way. And so, again, the combination of their steps and highlighting their plan, I thought was really cool to kind of highlight that it's not just all physical force and action, it can also be law, legal procedures, going to court. It was just really cool. I like that they highlighted that aspect of it and not just focused on full throttle action. Speaking of full throttle action, though, there was a lot of that in the third act. And this kind of leads into my second pro of this film, In the Gray. The third act of this movie had just nonstop action. And it was just taking you through how the team set up different types of traps, shooting bazookas, escaping a prison. All of this action that they highlighted not only looked cool, but it was filmed in such a cool and clean way where you didn't see a lot of jump cuts. There was no shaky camera, which, again, if you've heard any of the prior episodes of me talking about action, you most likely know that I do not like shaky camera. And luckily, for the most part in The Gray, I didn't see too much of that. So always a pro for me. But another thing that really just worked about the action in the third act is that they actually did a excellent job of setting up what they were actually going to do. So in the first and second act, they're kind of explaining to the audience in a very exposition type of way, but it does a really clear and concise job of explaining, hey, here are a couple of rendezvous points in case we get into trouble. Hey, here's a little bit of a trap that we're going to set up in case some of Salazar's men try to follow us in some kind of way. And so they really did a good job of explaining to the audience, here's all of the potential routes that we could go down. And hey, guess what? In the third act, we're about to hit every single one of these game plans that we set up in order to highlight how we're going to make a successful outcome of our situation. So again, that was really cool. Just not only the action itself, the set pieces that they made, but the setup of it and letting the audience know early on, hey, you might want to pay attention to this because you're probably going to see this a little bit later. All right, let's move on to some of the cons because I do have a couple nitpicks that I got from watching this movie. So, the first con that I have for In the Gray is I did feel that the writing was just a little bit flat at times. There were certain moments or scenes where it seemed like the writing was kind of setting up for a character to be funny or to say a very quick witted line. And nobody laughed in the audience. Now, that sample size is very small. I've only seen this movie once. It was opening night. There was a couple people in our theater. This does not encompass everybody that has seen this movie, but it's just unfortunate that there were various moments in this movie where you just have these characters that are supposed to be very cool, are supposed to be in control and say these very funny lines, and it just got no reaction out of me. So that was an unfortunate part. Some of the writing and the jokes just did not work. It's not meant to be a comedy as well. So again, I can understand that this is just going to be a very personal thing, but I really wish that the writing or maybe the delivery of some of those lines could have been done just a little bit better. Second con that I have is going to be the pacing of this movie. Now, I like to always say on this podcast that I really have no problem if a movie has a very short runtime, if it has a long runtime, as long as you can keep me very interested, very curious of where the heck is this story going to go. In this film, In the Gray, the pacing was very quick. It would move from scene to scene, almost felt like we were watching a montage in various different moments. But I did feel like this movie needed just to slow down a little bit. Like, let certain scenes breathe a little bit more. There would be times when they would have negotiations and it would just move and move and move, and characters would be in different places or different countries. And I understand that when it comes to these types of action or thriller types of films, characters are moving from place to place very fast. But this film, In the Gray, is only an hour and 37 minutes. I mean, it's very short runtime. I feel like it probably needed an extra 10 minutes. Let it just kind of slow down just a little bit more, expand a certain amount of characters or story just to make us feel like we're living in this universe just a little bit longer. But once again, these are just personal nitpicks. You guys might disagree with some of those thoughts. And if you do, please share those thoughts down below in the comments. All right, that is all I got from a non-spoiler perspective for In the Gray. Now is a perfect time for us to transition into the spoiler section. What do we do here? We give you a little bit of plot details, what happens, we spoil a little bit about the ending, and then we talk a little bit more about what we liked on certain scenes or characters or things that we really didn't like as much, and we can, again, spoil more of the content of the movie. So if you don't want to be spoiled, if you don't want to be ruined about In the Gray, please jump out of the podcast now, watch the movie, then come back, and wherever you listen, drop in your comments. Let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear whether what I'm saying is just completely off base. And if you have your own opinions, please share those down below. I would love to read those and just kind of give you a little bit of a response as well. That way we can have a cool back and forth. All right, hopefully that gives you enough time in regards to getting a break because spoilers are starting right now. Okay, Salazar, the character played by Carlos Bardem, he is the villain and antagonist of this film. What makes him dangerous? I wanted to start off with this because I wanted to kind of set up the story as to why this team needed to be really careful. The reason Salazar is so hard to deal with and he's so dangerous is that he's actually had multiple different types of negotiations with prior lawyers or asset managers. And you then realize at the beginning of the movie that he actually signs these deals. He signs on the dotted line, and it seems like he's agreeing to give back whatever money he owes. And instead, he ends up killing whoever he negotiates with. So essentially, he's got a full list of folks that he has taken out because that's kind of how he schemes and how he just goes around different types of loopholes in order to not make deals. And at the beginning of the movie, you actually get to see he actually assassinates and kills the negotiator that had recently signed one of his deals. And so he kind of takes him out. Now he doesn't owe anything. The contracts that he signed are now void because that person has been taken out. And so this is kind of what makes the film very interesting, is that we're not on the lookout to steal this $1 billion from Salazar. We're actually out to try to see if Rachel can not only force him to pay up, but then keep her alive. Because if he pays, or at least agrees to pay, they're not out of the woods yet. Rachel still has to survive and make it out of whatever deal she is in with him, or wherever she might be in regards to making this deal. So that's what makes this central concept of this movie so interesting, is that, again, they're not trying to steal money. They're trying to force this individual, this billionaire, to pay the money that he owes and make it out alive. So this is where Rachel, Sid, and Bronco really start setting up the different members of their team, trying to get specialists to help them in any way. One of the cool things that I talked a little bit about in the non-spoiler section that I wanted to expand on was Rachel, played by Isa Gonzalez. She was ruthless when it came to the law and using, these types of legal procedures to force Salazar's hands. What she ended up doing in the movie was so cool. She ended up actually using international law to stop him from being able to use his yacht or his plane in order to fly to different countries, and stop him from moving around so that he can just stay in one direct spot in order to force a meeting and force a deal. She ends up trying to come up with really cool ways and really clever ideas to, once again, find out, okay, what are some of the properties and assets that he has? Let's try to immediately stop them from being able to be moved. Let's put some type of, criminal record or some type of aspect that will stop him from being able to use his yacht and go over the ocean or fly anywhere that he wants to go. And again, that's just a very unique way to try to force somebody into making a deal by, again, not trying to use any of your physical action. No, we're just using the law. We're going to use it to just get rid of all your assets or freeze your accounts in order for you to either stop wasting money or stop moving money around. Or what Sid and Bronco also do is maybe force you to spend even more money. Speaking of Sid and Bronco, they both have their own types of unique type of styles. And again, they're specialists in their own way. And each of them is able to basically come up with a method in order to stop something that is working for Salazar, or try to spy on them and kind of eavesdrop on what their next plans are. So Sid ends up using his own type of bribing and working with people that are on construction jobs for Salazar, and he's able to, once again, put some type of rule or law where this project cannot be completed. And so now Salazar is spending millions and millions of dollars on a project where nobody is working on, like a high-rise building. And so now he's just spending money for nothing being progressed. Bronco will basically set up different types of items to make an oil rig that Salazar owns not work anymore. And so again, millions and millions of dollars being spent for an oil rig that is not producing anything. And so those are the kind of aspects that I just really liked, that are a little bit, unique and a little bit off the beaten path when it comes to these kind of action heist movies. A lot of the times it's always about, a spy coming in and, trying to eavesdrop and understanding, okay, here's where they keep this and this and this. Instead, this is all kind of public knowledge in a way. Like, they found out, okay, well, he's trying to do a project here, or he owns an oil rig, or he has a yacht and a plane. Let's just block all of those and force his hand. That is just something that I think is really a cool idea that Guy Ritchie was able to play with. And I think he succeeded in at least highlighting that in the first part of the film. All right, and then another piece that I really liked is, again, alluding to the aspect of this action movie. You would think that the point of this is to come out with the money and you're trying to steal this from a wealthy billionaire. No, the point of this movie is actually to extract Rachel from the situation. The deal is going to be part one. The second part is, after you make this deal with Salazar, you have to escape his island, because if you don't, just like they started off the movie with, he's going to take you out and basically avoid paying whatever he has to pay. And so this is where Sid, Bronco, and Rachel really devise a plan on the island of Salazar that he owns in order to come up with different rendezvous points, different traps. And this is where a lot of the first and second act try to set you up with what are they going to do in order to take Rachel out so that they can keep her alive and not have her be assassinated by some of the members or the minions of Salazar. So again, very cool take in regards to how they're able to set up this kind of a plan. But again, that was a really cool way to at least kind of call out. And again, something that I'm hoping that other action movies can also do in the future and play around with that kind of an idea. If you're doing a heist movie or an action movie, you don't have to copy in the gray, but come up with another clever way to show that, hey, we're not just trying to steal a diamond or we're trying to steal money. No, we're trying to actually extract this person and keep them alive because they're actually more valuable to us than what we're trying to get back. So again, another awesome aspect that I at least appreciated from this movie. Okay, don't want to move into too much of the negative stuff, but I do want to call out that there are just a couple things that I wish could have been done a little bit better. I mentioned a little bit before that the writing was just flat. It just didn't feel like they were saying these lines and delivering them in a very, witty way. I felt like there was a lot of scenes that should have been funny that they weren't. One of my biggest nitpicks that I didn't want to mention on the non-spoiler side was that I actually felt that Henry Cavill and Jake Gyllenhaal, their characters of Sid and Bronco, I felt like they were too similar. I talked to my brother about this and he didn't agree with me. He didn't feel like they were, or I guess he felt that it was appropriate because they're both mercenaries and that, hey, they shouldn't have different types of attitudes. But in my opinion, I felt like both Sid and Bronco were too similar in their tone and in their personalities. I would have liked one of them just to be a little bit more cocky or a little bit more energetic, or one of them having charisma and one of them just being very monotone. Instead, I felt like both of them were pretty monotone. So I don't know, there wasn't enough contrast, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There wasn't enough of a difference between the two. And I'll give you an example. A prior Guy Ritchie movie, you have The Man from U.N.C.L.E. You have Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer. Now, both of those characters are not, any kind of exciting personalities, but you do see a contrast. You have Henry Cavill, who's more of the suave man. He goes out and just is able to communicate and talk to a lot of different types of folks and persuade a lot of people. And then you have Armie Hammer, who is more of, again, straight man. He's more of the guy that's not going to play around, no jokes, very serious, has his head in the game. And there's a difference. They're able to bounce off of each other and kind of butt heads. Now, I'm not saying that I wanted Sid and Bronco to have something similar where they were butting heads. There was always really cool banter between the two, but I feel like it would have hit a lot better if both of their personalities would have just been a little bit different. But once again, those are just my opinions. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree with that fact of Sid and Bronco maybe having too similar of personalities. Okay, other aspect that I wanted to highlight that I wish was expanded on more. This kind of alludes to the point that I brought up about the runtime and maybe wanting a couple of more minutes explaining certain areas. One of those was Rosamund Pike's character of Bobby. She gets introduced at the beginning. She has this type of tension and battle with Rachel, but they really didn't explain as much about her character. Like what was, she just seemed like she wanted to continue to moving up in the corporate world, but I don't know. I wanted to know more about her. Like, was she the true antagonist? Did she set up Rachel in any kind of way? Did she on purpose send her out to meet Salazar so she can get taken out? I don't know. I know that at the end she was kind of framed and eventually she was basically going to get fired because of everything that happened with Salazar. But I don't know. I really wish that character, especially Rosamund Pike, she's a great actress. They could have used her more if they wanted her to be the true antagonist. They could have set that up in a different way. Maybe I missed something or overlooked something. So if I did, just let me know down below in the comments. All right, then the last thing I want to say about this film is a couple things about the action. I mentioned how the third act has some really cool stuff. Just to describe it, what they end up doing is that they are able to force Salazar into a deal, but like I mentioned, the important part isn't just signing the deal. It's about taking Rachel out of Salazar's island. We need to have her survive in order to try to complete the deal and have him pay up. And so, Rachel ends up getting stuck in prison, and Sid and Bronco go and actually try to save her, and they do. They escape from the prison, and then you start going to the different rendezvous points, and they think that they have a chance, but as soon as they get to a certain point, some of the men or minions that work for Salazar end up blowing up some of their bases. So now they have to start traveling around the island. And again, this is where you get to see all of the game plan, all of the setup that they made in the first and second act, which is, it just delivers really well. And then you get to see a really cool moment where you have Sid and Bronco are using a bazooka and they're like hiding out, trying to protect Rachel. And then Bronco is just trying to wait for the perfect opportunity, and he just shoots a bazooka right at a helicopter that just blows up. It was just, again, all of that was cool. They were like in a little, sort of like not an ATV, but more of like one of those perfect cars for the road and like riding in the dunes. They were riding one of those, and just the way that they captured those types of sequences. There was like a camera in the back seat, and whenever there was explosion, it looked like the camera just took in all of that action. You could see all the dirt and the dust blowing by them as they're driving around the different types of areas of the island. All of that was just captured so well. And then the last piece that I like to call out that I feel like it was very minor. Maybe people will miss this detail, but there was a character in the film named Baker. Baker was played by Kojo Atta, and he was one of the helpers that worked on Bronco's team. He was like the bomb specialist. And there was a moment where he had to set up different types of mines and bombs, but there had to be somebody that has to stick behind and push the button. And he ends up, having this type of a discussion with Bronco about, hey, I'll stay behind. Don't worry, I'll be right behind you. And Bronco's telling him, no, 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 you can't stay. And you just have this very honest discussion by Baker, just saying, hey, man, stop playing around. It's like, I'm right behind you. And then you just hear Bronco say, fine, you got 2 minutes, and then you're out of there. There was no corny speech by Baker. There was nothing that was felt forced or like it felt like, a typical action trope where somebody has to stay behind and then they start giving a good speech saying, "Hey man, just tell my wife I love her," or tell this, or just that typical action kind of speak that you hear. No, in this one, Baker just kept radioing to Bronco saying, "I'm right behind you. I'm right behind you." He was obviously lying because he knew that there was no way that he was going to be able to escape, and he ended up sacrificing himself. But to me, that was one of the most believable sacrifices in an action movie that I've seen in a long time. A character that does not have to give a corny speech, who is being realistic, and he tells his leader and his commander, like, "Hey, stop messing around, man. We don't have time to argue and go back and forth. You go ahead, I'll be right behind you." And that, I don't know, that just that whole interaction and delivery of it just worked really well. Again, might be something minor that people just kind of overlook and pass by, but to me, I felt like it was a really believable piece of this action movie. All right, that is all I got from the spoiler section. Two more items to get through, and then we'll wrap up the podcast. First one, should you check out In the Gray in theaters? My personal opinion, although I did have fun with the action, I would say that this one is not like an immediate watch in the theaters. I think you can wait for this one for streaming. And then once it comes out, I think this will be a really good watch to check it out at home, see all the action, and check out all the different types of, things that they pull off in that third act. But that's my opinion. Not an immediate watch, more of a streaming movie. All right. And then last but not least, the most important question of this podcast: is In the Gray a timeless movie? In my opinion, this film is not timeless. Again, I really enjoyed the third act. I liked the way that they integrated law and using different types of procedures to try to force somebody to do something that they do not want to do. I thought all of that was really clever. But to me, what keeps it from not being timeless is the quality of the writing, the story, and just that aspect of it. If the story was a lot more exciting, a lot more tension being built up, I feel like I would have really, really wanted to see this again. Now, there are elements that maybe might make me go back to watch it, which would be more of the action scenes. But other than the action, I don't think there's anything that would kind of get me back. Like, no performance is really standing out to me. So those are my thoughts about In the Gray. However, for anybody listening out there, What are your thoughts of In the Gray? Have you had a chance to check out this movie? If you have, let me know down below. What was your favorite action sequence of the movie? Is this one of your favorite Guy Ritchie movies? And more importantly, do you think this movie is timeless and you would rewatch it in the future? Let me know down below. All right, everybody. Appreciate you all sticking around and hearing me ramble about this action movie called In the Gray. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 194 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out our next episode because we got a good one here. We got 195. We got my brother Omar coming back. We'll see what movie we end up talking about for the Memorial Day weekend. All right, everybody. Appreciate you all listening. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to y'all later.